Behind every routine traffic stop and neighborhood patrol lies a hidden digital score, an algorithmic prophecy that does not just predict where crime will happen, but actively mandates who is watched, who is harassed, and who is erased from socioeconomic mobility before they even commit a single infraction. We live in an era where the cold logic of silicon is being used to outsource moral judgment to machines. Yet these machines are not neutral observers. They are the digital architects of a new caste system, trained on decades of human prejudice. When we look at a patrol map today, we are not looking at a reflection of objective reality. We are looking at a feedback loop codified into software. This documentary series peels back the layers of predictive policing, examining how companies like Predictive have turned the history of systemic inequality into a mathematical blueprint for modern law enforcement. We must confront the chilling reality that our data does not describe the world as it is, but rather traps it in a cycle of yesterday's worst behaviors. To understand the current crisis in predictive policing, we must first look at the foundation upon which these algorithms are built: historical arrest data. Proponents of artificial intelligence often argue that math is inherently objective, but math is only as clean as the data fed into it. For over a century, urban policing strategies have been skewed by structural factors, from redlining policies that quarantined populations to the over-policing of marginalized neighborhoods under the guise of the war on drugs. When developers ingest this historical data into machine learning models, they are not importing neutral observations. They are importing decades of human bias. These algorithms treat past arrests as the definitive ground truth of criminal activity, ignoring the reality that arrest rates are frequently a measure of police presence rather than actual crime incidents. By training software on skewed datasets, we are essentially building a digital echo chamber that validates historical discrimination under the shiny veneer of technological progress, effectively laundering institutional bias through complex, opaque mathematical frameworks. The feedback loop is the engine of the predictive policing machine. Imagine a patrol algorithm that calculates a high probability of crime in a specific block based on past arrests. The department dispatches additional officers to that neighborhood. Because there are more officers on the street, they notice more minor infractions, perform more stop and frisk procedures, and file more arrest reports. This fresh batch of data is then fed back into the algorithm, which interprets the increased arrest frequency as proof that its original prediction was correct. The machine then orders even more police presence for the next shift. This cycle is a self-fulfilling prophecy, a mathematical death spiral that ensures certain communities remain under perpetual scrutiny regardless of actual safety trends. As the algorithm directs human labor, the bias hardens into an operational reality. The computer tells the officer where to go, and the officer's presence guarantees the algorithm will get the results it expects, creating an impenetrable circle of algorithmic justification for systemic overpolicing. When we analyze the visual interface of predictive policing tools, we see vibrant heat maps, splashes of red and orange that indicate hot zones. To a command center, these maps look like objective tools for efficiency and resource allocation. However, these spatial probability maps are essentially digital manifestations of historical segregation. By focusing on geographic clusters, these tools hide the human element of policy choice behind a veneer of scientific necessity. When an entire neighborhood is coded red, every citizen living within those borders becomes a suspect by default, regardless of their individual conduct. The visualization of crime shifts from individual accountability to environmental profiling, turning residential blocks into virtual cages of suspicion. This spatial bias effectively mandates that law enforcement ignores the white-collar crime happening in suburban office parks while disproportionately concentrating force in neighborhoods already suffering from decades of underinvestment. We are watching the automation of geography, where place of residence serves as a proxy for probable cause, stripping individuals of the presumption of innocence based on their zip code. Beyond patrol maps, the most dangerous frontier of algorithmic policing is the risk assessment tool, such as COMPAS, used in pretrial and sentencing decisions. These programs assign a numerical score to a defendant's likelihood of recidivism, often with life-altering consequences for bail and prison time. Yet the variables these programs weigh are deeply problematic, often utilizing proxies for criminality, like parental incarceration, zip code, and employment history. These data points are socioeconomic markers, not reliable predictors of future behavior. When a machine determines that a person is high risk, that score follows them through the entire justice process, influencing judges and prosecutors who may rely on the computer's output to justify harsher penalties. This is not just a technological error, it is a profound ethical violation that converts a person's demographic profile into an actuarial statement of their potential danger. We are seeing a shift from due process to data process, where the nuances of human experience and redemption are discarded in favor of a static, reductionist score generated by a proprietary engine. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of these technologies is their status as proprietary software. Corporations like Northpoint and others claim their code is a trade secret, shielding the underlying logic of their risk assessment algorithms from public scrutiny or independent audit. When a defendant stands before a judge, they are effectively being judged by a black box that they cannot open, challenge, or even understand. Defense attorneys are rarely permitted to examine the weightings or the specific data points that contribute to a client's high-risk designation. This creates a fundamental crisis of transparency in our judicial system. How can we uphold the constitutional right to confront one's accuser when the accuser is a hidden algorithm, governed by code that no one is allowed to cross-examine? By protecting intellectual property over the public interest, these companies have effectively neutered the judiciary's capacity for oversight, leaving the most vulnerable members of society at the mercy of algorithms that are invisible, unaccountable, and frequently flawed. The marketing of predictive policing relies on the alluring myth of objective efficiency. We are told that these systems save taxpayer dollars, optimize patrol routes, and keep officers safe by warning them of impending danger. While these outcomes are theoretically possible, they are being pursued at the cost of civil liberties. Efficiency is not a synonym for justice. In the pursuit of maximizing arrest throughput, we have sidelined the fundamental principles of fairness and the individual assessment of human behavior. The efficiency of a police department is often measured by the volume of arrests, which creates a perverse incentive to keep the data streams flowing toward punitive outcomes. We are trading the slow, deliberate work of constitutional policing for the rapid-fire convenience of automated profiling. This technological shortcut does not solve crime. It merely streamlines the machinery of detention. By prioritizing speed and optimization, we are inadvertently building a society that values the fluidity of institutional processes over the humanity of the citizens they are supposed to serve and protect. Where do we go from here? The conversation about predictive policing must move beyond technical patches and into the realm of structural policy. If we are to use algorithms, they must be subject to open-source audit, rigorous public transparency, and strict prohibitions against using socioeconomic indicators as proxies for risk. We need to decouple law enforcement from the deterministic traps of historical data and return the human element to the center of justice. This means shifting from reactive, machine-driven policing to proactive, community-centered social investment. We must stop asking machines where to send police and start asking how we can use data to identify systemic failures in education, housing, and mental health. The algorithmic caste system is not an inevitable feature of a modern society. It is a choice we made by prioritizing technological convenience over human rights. It is time to decommission the prophecy and begin building a system that measures success not by how many people we detain, but by how many barriers we remove for the future.